Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Unite Conversations with humans, beings, Americans who are on the front lines of trying to change our country and heal the dehumanization, the fracturing, the demonization that is causing so much pain and so many challenges. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Ben Rekhi, and who is an extraordinary filmmaker. You'll hear from him in just a second, and Susan Bro, the subject of Ben's new film, and a great American in her own right, not for reasons maybe she might have chosen. Susan, as you'll come to meet her just momentarily, is the mother of Heather Heyer, who was sadly murdered in Charlottesville, Virginia, just a few short years ago. Ben, Susan, welcome, and thank you both for being uniters, for being bridge builders, for recognizing the power of this moment in our national reckoning and challenging all of us through your thoughts and your leadership to do something about it. Welcome to Unite.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having us.
Ben, tell us a little bit about the film, where we can see it, Reunited States, where we can learn from it, how we can tune in, and a little bit about how you got to making it.
Sure. Yeah, the Reunited States, we started this film about 2 years ago. It basically follows stories of people on the journey trying to bridge our political and racial divides. And it zooms in on 4 everyday heroes that are working through the uphill battle of trying to bring us closer together. And Susan Bro is one of the characters in the film. There's 3 others that we've followed over this period. And it really challenges the assumption that polarization is something that's happening to us, but rather is something that's happening inside of each of us. And that we're all either part of the problem or part of the solution when it comes to these divisions. And that's sort of a radically different way to look at it. It sounds simple, but a lot of the time we like to think this is coming from the outside or coming from the other side and they're the problem. But really the film forces us to look within and look in the mirror and say, what am I doing that might be putting fuel on the fire or diffusing our tensions? And we all have a role to play. So we hope that's what comes out of it. The film is about to release in the end of January, just after the inauguration. And right now we're on our Impact screening tour and the film festival tour. So people can find out more about us and get in touch with us at reunitedstates.tv.
I wish we could release it immediately, because many of us find ourselves, even in this election season and in the post-election season, confronted by a sense of powerlessness. What can we do? Somebody must be responsible for this. Susan, you lived a journey, as you point out in the film several times, no, you wouldn't wish on anyone. And yet, confronted by the full horror of this divisiveness taking the life of your own child, you found a way somehow to act, to lead, to model for us an alternate pathway forward. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you found the strength to be such an extraordinary role model for us.
I've always been brought up with the mindset that in time of crisis, you do a couple of things. One, you go into work mode because that kind of controls your circumstances. But 2, if a major event happens to you in your life, there must be a reason. So find out what that reason is and make use of that reason. So going forth with that mindset from the beginning has, 1, given me an outlet for the grief, but 2, has helped me to make use of this platform that was unfairly handed to me. I am not the first mother to ever lose a child in a protest. I'm not the first mother to ever lose a child. And yet I have this tremendous platform that's been given me. So what can I do to draw attention back to the issues? What can I do to make use of that power in a responsible way? I don't take that responsibility lightly. I'm very serious about making my daughter's death count. That blood price, that human sacrifice that we seem to need in society before we act, impacted me personally. So personally, I'm going to step up and step out and encourage others to do so.
It's hard to hear that human sacrifice we seem to need, but indeed, at some level, we have witnessed not just your own daughter's death, but the death of others, innocent men and women, live on television, murdered in front of our very eyes. How do we move beyond? How do you move beyond the anger and the sense, I can't imagine that you don't feel that someone caused this, that you should have to pay for it, that it's
Well,
not
he
us, it
did.
was him.
He paid. Others are paying in other ways. As for the perpetrator, I hand them over to justice. As for how to move forward with this, Heather had adopted a motto: if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And yet I know she didn't just live in outrage. You turn the outrage into action. You turn that outrage into something that drives you forward. I will tell you honestly, I was driven very hard by the grief and the anger for the first 6 months. And then I crashed. I crashed hard and probably cried for a solid 6 weeks at home. My poor husband had no idea what to do with me for a while. And then I sort of dusted myself off and said, okay, back to work. And that's where I've been. The grief comes and goes, the anger comes and goes, but the anger is only useful when it's channeled into action. Living in hate is not an option for people. Hate is far more caustic to the person who holds on to that hate than it is for the person that it's directed towards. I just think that more of us would choose to live in a state of action and proactive rather than living in a reactive and angry state at all times. And that holds true in our country, especially now.
Ben, in the film, you chart these journeys, and I won't spoil the plot lines because they're fascinating journeys. Average Americans of different qualities and types, exploring, challenging the hate. I mean, Susan has just said, we can't live in hate, and yet it seems like your stories are people who are recognizing that we are living in hate. Tell us a little bit about what you learned watching these people take these journeys, and what you learned about how we can convert from hate to action, if that's the right way to think about it.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a pretty extraordinary journey just to live in these conversations and really zoom in on people that are actively trying to heal our divisions and reach across the aisle. I think we're all so siloed now in our echo chambers and our bubbles that we really seldom get to meet people with a differing worldview. And when we do, we see it as a threat or something to be feared, or worse, to be pushed down and disbanded. And so one of the stories, the Levertons, is a Republican family from Texas who Dave used to work in Republican politics, and kind of when 2016 came around, realized that he'd fueled a lot of the divisions that were now on full display, and had this crisis of conscience. And his wife turned to him and said, "Look, if we didn't have a mortgage and 3 kids, what would you want to do with your life?" And without thinking, he said, "I'd want to repair this damage and bring unity back to the country." And so that's what they did. They sold their house, they bought an RV, and they traveled to all 50 states to find out what is causing these divisions. And they go into Black communities, Native reservations, border towns, and really start to understand that the experience of one American is not the same as Americans. And that effort is something that is required of each of us. Like the title of your organization and the motto of A Call to Unite is actually that. It's a choice. It's an action that we have to take. And for us, it's very personal for everyone. We all have family members and friends and coworkers that we've fallen out of favor with, that we don't talk to anymore. And it's because we haven't cultivated the tools of how to speak across those divisions. And so you talk about solutions. One of the biggest things I would say is, don't try and change someone's mind when you go into a conversation. We're not here to be someone's savior or teach them the facts, or my facts are better than your facts. Really go in trying to understand how they arrived at that point of view, because beneath what we see on the surface is people's real emotions and their dreams and their fears. And that's what we have in common as people. And so I go into interview mode. I see it as an opportunity when I find someone that I disagree with. Rather than trying to win a conversation, I try and get to the bottom of how they arrived there. And you start to find common ground in the most unexpected places.
I mean, it's such a hard thing for all of us, it seems, to go into a conversation without trying to change the other person, husbands and wives, parents, siblings, coworkers. It seems like we're poised to change the other person all the time. And there's a beautiful scene, Susan, towards the end of the film where you turned to the person, and again, I don't want to spoil the film, and said, I didn't want to come here today.
Yeah.
I didn't want to meet you. And the first thing that came to my mind is, so why did you? What allowed you to go from, I don't want to talk to you, you're part of the problem. I could feel your anger. And then I felt also this sense in which you had moved beyond your anger to be there. How did you do that?
I had to get past emotion and be rational. I had to calm myself down, say, give him a chance. I trust Ben.
Good job, Ben.
Yeah, Ben was definitely the bridge there. But regardless, these people had reached out and invited me into their home. And so I had to give them a chance. And I'm glad I did, because what the film doesn't show is we proceeded to have a wonderful evening, very long conversations, and a great coming together of understanding after that. But of course, Ben would have a 3-day documentary had he tried to put so much in.
I wish he had. I'd love to see this.
Great outtakes.
You could probably make a whole nother film from the outtakes. But yeah, and that's what it takes. I met with some reporters from another country yesterday at my office, and they were trying very hard to understand American divisiveness right now in American politics. And I said, that they asked me, do you see civil unrest coming? And I said, well, that's up to the citizens. And they said, what do you mean? I said, it's up to us as individuals to decide not to blow up over this, no matter what happens. And then later they asked me, well, who do you see as more powerful, the left, and he held up one hand, or the right, and he held up another hand? And I said, the people in the middle. I said, that's where most of us live. Most of us don't live at the extremes. We live in the middle. So we have to, at this point in our country, place our vote, work with the system as best we can, change what we don't like about the system, change what's wrong about the system, but at the same time, find ways to live a rational life and to let others live a rational life. The caustic nature of being divided, and the knowledge that us versus them is keeping us fractured, is fracturing our democracy terribly. We have power to control that. We as citizens have the ability and the obligation to control that narrative and to control our response to it. We're not children. We don't have to react just because somebody tries to make us react. As a parent, my dad was famous for giving the one eyebrow raise, and I learned it as a teacher as well. We have the obligation and the opportunity to look at those people, raise that one eyebrow, and go, "Oh, really?" We're rational. We are rational at our core. We may forget that from time to time. We may get pushed to our limits, but we have the ability to calm this down and to make it go the direction we want it to, together, as a country, together.
Susan, you were a teacher. You're teaching now in a new
Yes.
in a new environment. What's the big lesson? What are you feeling in your heart, if you could get it out of your heart and let the whole country, let all of us understand it? What's the lesson that's most powerful right now?
Each of us has the power to control our own narrative to some degree. We don't have control over all of our circumstances, but we have the ability to control our response to those circumstances. And we have an obligation as a citizen to step up and step out in positive directions to make to the change that we want to see. Too often people sit back and go, oh, the government's doing this, the government's doing that, the government's not doing this, not doing that. And we wring our hands and go, gee, somebody should do something about it. Well, guess what? You're the one that needs to do something about it. If you see it, work on it. It was brought to your attention for a reason. So see how you can get involved, see how you can be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem, but a part of the solution. And you have that capability somehow. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come to you.
Each of us has power. Ben, one of the things I was struck about in the film is you take on the issues of immigration, race, Native communities, abortion, gender, politics, media. I mean, all of the pain points are in this narrative. Do you, I mean, and you put 80 minutes on the screen, but I'm sure you saw hundreds of hours. What's the lesson you learned in watching all of these journeys for what we need to do right now?
Well, when you run through the laundry list like that, it does sound like all of the easy topics, right?
Yeah, right. Wow.
I think that the thing that was an opportunity with the film was to really humanize these issues. You know, those are some third rail issues, and they're frankly the ones that are most divisive. And it's because we don't understand from all points of view what it is, the experiences of going through those, crisis as you laid out. And so we really wanted the film to be an emotional experience. We see plenty of more journalistic portrayals of these issues of people, showing the pros and cons very loudly. But when you see someone who, is forced with these decisions personally, and the humanity and the challenges that they're faced, you can't help but be disarmed and understanding. And so that, 80-minute experience, it's visceral, it's not academic. It's the way to change minds is to move people's hearts. And look, people are terrified right now. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. It's on the rise again. The economy's in free fall. There's racial injustice. There's political chaos. There's reasons that we all are afraid. There's a lot of existential risks. The rock bottom of our divisions. But where we find hope is exactly what Susan said, is in our own choices and our own actions. While the media has been used to divide us, I firmly believe it can be part of what brings us back together and inspires hope and healing. And while there may be some civil unrest or some people in the streets that are unhappy one way or the other, there's many more tens of millions of Americans that want to avoid violence, that want to find a way through this. And we're at this crossroads right now where we can either descend further into division or turn ourselves around and get ourselves out together. And that choice is each of ours. It's not only our elected officials. That's 330 million people that need to make that choice for themselves.
One of the most powerful moments for me in the film is when one of your protagonists shares the story that she says that she hadn't often shared before. A woman of color sharing the story with a white woman about her losing her child because of neglect in the healthcare system. And it just struck me that if we could all just share our real story, the points of pain, the points of struggle, as you've done, Susan, maybe it's just understanding. This is just answering the call to be understood, to be seen. You both have done such an extraordinary, given us a gift as a country, and will continue, I'm sure, to give us the gift of allowing us, showing us that there's space out there in the media, in political action, in organizing, in meeting one another, to hear each other deeply, and in the hearing to, I hope, and certainly the film suggests, to be transformed, even if it's just, as they say, one at a time. Susan, the work goes on. Heather's life will always, I know, animate yours and so many other people who have been inspired by her simple action. Show up, be counted, demand change. As the film comes out, all of us as uniters, we think we're starting to think there's almost a skill set, right? There's almost a toolkit we need. The listening skills you've described, the power to turn hate into action, the capacity to have moral courage in the face of injustice. I hope both of you will stay teachers in this, not teachers just in the classroom sense, but teachers in the sense of colleagues, companions for all of us as we try to travel this road from this painful division and fear about our future to a much more just and a much more hopeful next chapter in our country's history. Ben, thank you. Susan, thank you. Last words?
Thank you. Be willing to be transparent, make connections. That's the only way you're going to reach other people.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just say keep hope alive. It may be a little bit bumpy in the weeks ahead, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we will get through this. Any adversity makes you stronger. So keep hope alive.
Beautiful. The Reunited States of America coming soon. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Susan.